Tron and Tron Legacy are two of my favorite movies in part because they're simple stories told with enough philosophical, technical, and religious thought that the films mean more than their big-budget roots. The incredible electronic music score and unlike anything else graphics have been more than enough to make me a fan, but it's their process of creation and story that makes me a Tron nerd. Tron Ares is a darker, more cynical look at the world of technology and the society funding its creation. The original Tron was a frequently lighthearted, let's go on an adventure plot, straight out of Disney's live-action and animated playbook of the 1970s and 80s. The original Tron leaned heavily into a wide-eyed future of marvelous possibility, fueled by the rapid rise of early computing, even if its world inside of a computer was corrupted by a corporate villain breaking the law. Tron Legacy flipped the script on the cause of fascism in the grid by making its core problem the hubris of the good guy. Legacy's grid was doomed to fail because the person who created it was unable to see his own ignorance. Tron Ares shines a harsher spotlight on technological advancement in 2025, its addiction to the military, and a world run by maladjusted uber-rich who wouldn't be interested in self-reflection even if they had the capacity to engage in it. Ares looks, sounds, and feels like a monster movie mixed with a disaster flick. The biggest problem with Tron Ares is Hollywood's generally unskilled confusing of plot with story and references to ideas with meaning. The cast is overly big and gets little to no backstory. I never cared for most of the characters because they're mostly blank pages with one or two quirks in lieu of personality or sense of life. Ares does have interesting things to say about artificial intelligence in our future, particularly in confronting us with our own abuse of technology as programs get self-reliant. Writing a program to reset makes for a good security protocol until that program becomes intelligent enough to care, at which point the destruction feels like death at the hands of an uncaring master. The sometimes overly on-the-nose Christian allegory of the original Tron and Legacy are basically missing in Ares. Instead, we get an escape the evil corporation story that gets lost in the sea of tangents involving characters with singular motivations being led scene to scene mostly due to magic plot dust. In the original Tron, the grid was a world of computers, an endless landscape that didn't explicitly say it included every computer, but kind of hinted at it. Legacy was specifically a virtual world created by the now rich and Steve Jobs famous Kevin Flynn, but other worlds aren't mentioned and seem unlikely to exist. Ares specifically takes place in multiple realities, with each virtual world being its own network. It makes sense, even as it leads to horrifically destructive consequences and tends to undercut the message and plot the writing is trying to send. It's interesting how much Ares borrows from horror and horror-related science fiction movies of the 1970s and 80s, especially European zombie films, apocalyptic science fiction, and The Terminator. As you'd expect from a Tron movie, the music's one of its best parts, and Nine Inch Nails' soundtrack is thankfully as great as you'd hope. Ares' best moments happen when Nine Inch Nails' music is filling the theater with weird, trippy, blurry, vintage-sounding synth and thunderous swoops, while a recognizer crashes into a city downtown, and the violent toys of the military-industrial complex battle it out in the streets and skies. Ares mostly doesn't try to emulate the cycle racing of Legacy or general combat of the original Tron. While there are excellent vehicles and vehicle combat throughout Ares, much of the combat focuses on close-quarters weapons and acrobatics. The trails left by light cycles now come from weapons wielded by parkour and martial arts-trained fighters, giving Ares a close-up feel to its combat unique to the series. Legacy's melee fight inside of the End of the Line Club looks downright pathetic compared to the carefully choreographed CGI-fueled stage fights in Ares, even if I'd take Legacy over Ares any day. Watching skilled combatants weave through light walls that block or slice gives the creative team fertile ground. Frankly, this couldn't have been made in 2010, and Ares is a great example of what can be produced pretty easily these days, given enough people and money. Thankfully, unlike the too much money antics of people like James Cameron, the CGI feels very real in Ares and weaves through plot, combat, and spectacle in a way that works exceptionally well. There's cool shit for sure, and if all you're going for is crazy looking on a big screen, maybe with an edible, go see this now in 3D. I say IMAX at 12,000 watts. Ares is not a movie to stream later. Seeing both Legacy and Ares as a 3D double feature in IMAX was a total blast, regardless of how good Ares is. I loved my time there. It was a super night at the movies. I watched it again on a nice, but not amazing, digital 3D screen afterwards, and I can definitely recommend the IMAX as the way to go. I personally really liked the 3D of Ares and found it mostly understated in a good way. The people who did the 3D part of the movie have a good understanding of its benefits and how to weave it into the movie. At points, I forgot I was actually watching it in 3D, which is a good thing. It absolutely added to the filmmaking. Ares presents a world that goes straight to hell, fueled by a lack of forethought about what all this data gathering, tracking, and cameras mean when your enemy has instant access to where you are and can do the finding a human brain takes minutes to do in milliseconds. Ares is at its best when we see these fools face the consequences of their actions, and the movie is at its weakest when the plot tries to get us to care about people whose personality and backstory is so shallow that one of the more complex characters is a good CEO because she spent some of her gluttonous wealth and corporate profit to make life better, as if that were generally possible while also being the paid head of a global leader in tech, funded by military budgets and shareholders looking for constant growth. I won't even get into some of the massive logic holes in the plot, but let's say apparently the scriptwriters didn't consider angry to be an emotion, and their ability to recognize genocide is questionable at best. The cast is overall good to excellent, even if the ensemble's packed too full to care. Particularly offensive, though, is the casting of Gillian Anderson as a dominating mother stereotype who provides the mommy issues to the main villain, as if he needed a reason he was that way that isn't because he's a dumb, rich, spoiled Nepo kid in a world that currently puts these kind of folks into positions of governmental power. Jared Leto in particular is a great choice for Ares. Whatever his personal life and ethics bring to the discussion, he provides an intensity to his performance, despite a restricted emotional requirement for the role. He captures the inane annoyance of AI replies well as he questions humanity, and he provides most of the emotional and philosophical anchor to the story. The Tron series has always shown a mirror on current culture's thoughts on tech. Tron came from a place of wonder at future promise, legacy from a technology-literate culture asking what it all meant, and now Ares from a cynical world where technology is a threat to freedom and safety and a constant presence tracking and storing our lives. Thankfully, we don't live in a world where wealthy creeps willing to engage in unethical behavior conduct themselves with basic inhumanity, while being in charge of media from the highest broadcasters all the way down to grassroots-style online communication. We live in the world imagined by Tron, only it didn't work out like we thought because Dillinger won and his products are now gluttonously consuming energy and making it so you can no longer believe what you see or hear, at least without time to research. The emptiness of Ares' overall message might be the point. We live in a world of limitless possibility and guaranteed suffering as a result. There's an excellent scene in Tron Legacy where the main villain Clue, a program built to create a perfect world, plaintively asks his creator why he's no longer loved, why Flynn's attention turned against him when faced with the miracle of a new self-created population within the grid. "I've done everything you've asked," Clue pleads. And Flynn responds that Clue can't understand his failure because Flynn wasn't capable of that understanding when he created Clue. The same could be said for the people who made Ares. The movie lacks enough intelligence to say much more than, "I guess the world's kind of neat when you think about it." It's a good time, though. Thanks for taking the time to hear my thoughts on this. Have a great day.